Good afternoon, Arundel County. Good afternoon, America. Welcome to another episode of Promoting Community, Conversation, and Discovery. I'm your host, Anthony Bynum. The name of our production company is the Glen Burnie Players. Fresh off our trip from Jamaica. Had a good time down there at the nuptials for Mike Van and um, Valerie Green. So, welcoming her into our family of friends. Yes, we are. So, uh, we have an exciting show today. Very exciting show. Let's start off with some upcoming announcements. School's right around the corner, but also is the Maryland Renaissance Festival. That's right here in Anne Arundel County. People dress up in medieval garb. I've never been to one. I tried to go to one time, and I was too late with the tickets. Talking about tickets. Watch out for scam tickets. I read that. Watch out for scam tickets. People selling scam tickets. Many, many years ago, my boys worked there, um, 2 summers. Yeah, uh, it's a good way to learn, Good way to learn. So we want to thank our affiliates for airing our shows, Community Conversation and Discovery Star right here in Anne Arundel County with AAC TV, that's in Glen Burnie. Greenbelt Cable Access in PG County, thank you for airing our shows. Manhattan Neighborhood Network, that's in the Big Apple, thank you for airing our shows. Amherst Media, that's in Massachusetts, thank you for airing our shows. And Brunswick TV3, that's in Maine. Now, I just heard from them recently. I had submitted our show, The Birth of We Do, to them, and they're going to take a look at it and decide if they're going to air the show. So, fingers crossed on that one. Okay. Also, our references, that's Wikipedia for this week and Google Images. Thank you all. We can't do the show without you. And of course, our sponsors underwriter, that is the Cleaning Chef. More information available about them in the credits. Now, let's go to Most Mart. I was getting worried. Getting worried. Normally, Tuesday, Wednesday, the ideas are floating in my head, and nothing was floating in my head. I had someone in mind, but I really wanted to save him for actually save him for down the pike a little bit. But we'll talk about that later. I found out about another one of these hidden gems, very important woman. Open the doors for a whole group of people. You're going to understand what I'm talking about in a second. Let's go to the share. I'm talking about Mary Eliza Mahoney. So Mary was born 5/7, 1845. She died 1/4, 1926. So Mary was actually born in Dorchester, Massachusetts. But her parent, Charles and Mary Jane Mahoney, were born in North Carolina, and they were enslaved people. But they must have bought their freedom, won their freedom. However, they became emancipated. They did. And they knew they needed to leave. So they knew there was a place where Black folks were thriving, and that was in Massachusetts. They moved north, and they had their daughter. I don't know if they had any other children, but they had their daughter. Like I said, Mary was born 5/7, 1845. She would go on to become the first professionally trained registered Black nurse in America. That is a tremendous achievement. So let's talk a little bit about this. See, very young, the age of 10, she was admitted into the Phillips School, which was an integrated school from grades 1 through 4. We don't know if she continued with schooling after that. We don't know. We just know she was a smart girl. That's what we know. Um, it was actually, though, where she went to her training was at the New England Hospital for Women and Children. And she was admitted uh, into class here at the age of 33. Now, she was actually 2 years over the age limit, but they took a chance on her. You know why? Because from the time she was 18, she was in their employ, and she worked as a washerwoman, which was what a lot of Black women did in those days. She worked as a cook, which is something a lot of Black women did in those days. Uh, but she knew she wanted more. And with nursing, you have to learn because there's a lot of biology in nursing. There's a lot of science and even some chemistry understandings in nursing. I'd never make it through, but she did. In fact, 40 people were in her class. It's a 16-month course. 40 people. Only 3 made it through, and she was one of the 3. An incredible story. So, uh, there you go, right? She nursed wherever she could nurse. So the person who story that I saw said that she couldn't get regular jobs at the hospital, so she wherever she could go, she went, hung that shingle, so to speak. In fact, in 1908, she met with Martha Franklin and Ada Thomas. They were 2 of her colleagues. They met in the Big Apple, New York, and they formed an association called the National Association of Colored Graduate Nurses. It was an association. The whole idea was to improve access to education and nursing practices and to raise the standards for Black women nurses, create opportunities. Now, that organization lasted a long time. Eventually, it folded, but it folded into another organization. So that dream of hers is alive. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. She was something else, though. Her guiding principle, work more and better the coming year than the previous year. So she understood the importance of always getting better. She understood it. What a story. But something else interesting about her. And I've said this before. The 3 main movements of the 18th century were abolition, women's suffrage, and prohibition. They all kind of came out around the same time, but they all kind of took their own course. Well, anyway, she followed the women's suffrage movement fairly closely. And in fact, in 1920, after women were given the right to vote, I believe that's the correct year, she went and registered to vote, and she voted for the first time at the age of 76. I always like to think that even though, most Black people in America were enslaved, they knew what was going on. They were aware of, it's called situational awareness. They were aware of the times, aware of what was going on. The person I wanted to talk about, and I will eventually talk about, he knew what was going on. We're going to say him for a while back, but the people are aware of their environments. People who are invested in their environment, who are working, trying to live a decent life. They know what's going on. They're paying attention. They overhear people talking. If they have the ability to read, they read. They talk. They listen. So she was one of those women. She was one of those people. This Mary Eliza Mahoney. My hat's off to you because I love your story. Matter of fact, we're going to talk a little bit more about nursing in general in a second. But before we do, we're going to talk about something else of consequence regarding Arundel County. That's always the second segment. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Temple Beth Shalom. Now, it's located at 1461 Baltimore Annapolis Boulevard in Arnold. This is a Reformed Jewish congregation serving Annapolis and Arundel County. At this time, there are approximately 400 families that are served, about 1,500 people. I went to service here one time, something I was working on. They have their own preschool, they have youth groups, they have a sisterhood. Now, in 1960, many years ago, 4 families wanted to create a Reformed Jewish community. Initially, services were held at a fire station and at a local church, but they grew quickly. In 1963, with a contributions, land was purchased. Rabbi Ari Goldstein is their leader. That in itself is a great story. So I want to stop the share right now because I want to get back to this issue of nursing. Okay, I guess I need to blow that up a little bit. I want to get back to this issue of nursing. Family tree nurses, right? My mom is a nurse, registered nurse. And when she went to nursing, my mom doesn't actually have a bachelor's. So she just went on a program just for nursing at the what's it called? The Grady Colored School for Nursing, located right over there near uh, uh, Morehouse, not that far away. My wife's a nurse. She went to Hampton. She is an RN. My niece-in-law, Ari Bradley, is a nurse. Last weekend, I was in Jamaica celebrating the nuptials of Mike Gavan. Well, Mrs. Gavan, his mom, she's gone now. She was a nurse. At Hampton, the nursing school was formed in 1891, so those folks knew. They knew this was a profession that mostly black women, there are some male nurses, but mostly women do this kind of thing. They knew it was an opportunity. So that's why they formed the school. Now the building is called the Mary Frances Thomas Memorial Building, but when I was there, it was called essentially Freeman Hall. Well, William Freeman Hall, but we call it Freeman Hall. Yes, a whole group of people, so many folks work in that profession. It's an honorable profession. You have to know science. You gotta know enough math and biology. You gotta know the equipment. You can't be giving the doctors the wrong stuff. That's not good. That's not good. Gotta be tough to be a nurse. A lot of guts and a lot of something else. But you gotta deal with all of it. You gotta deal with all of it. It's a profession. It's an honored profession. Yes. So, exciting times here in Anne Arundel County. The next 2 weeks, hopefully, we can get the Adventures of Hour back out. So we have the scorings done. We have it back. Now we need to get down on the editing and create opportunities. So for everyone here at the Glen Burnie Players, again, my name is Anthony Bynum. Until next time, bye bye.